Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you on this Thursday. I am still out in Birmingham, Alabama, getting ready for Vandy women's basketball's now neutral site game against Ole Miss tomorrow. Parker Kelly back at our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. For those of you tuning in looking for TD, no TD today, but he did tune in with us or come in on the show with us yesterday. So we got to talk with TD a little bit, but big day, Robert Saleh being introduced. So TD will be back for his full appearance on the show next week on Thursday. But we've got a fun show planned for you today. Obviously, lots of Titans talk. Mentioned the introductory press conference for Robert Saleh. That's coming up at 2 p.m. today. Staff additions happening very fast. 3 new names came up yesterday. And we'll also take a way too early look at free agency as the Titans look to improve their roster this season. Also, Andrew Allegretta joining us at 9:45 to talk some Vandy football. Parker, how's it going?
It's going good, Jake. I was just talking to you before we got on the air that it's a big day. Robert Saleh being introduced. It feels like several years ago when he was hired, and now we finally get to hear from him. I'm sure that he's going to win the press conference, but it's exciting nonetheless that we actually get to listen to the new head coach.
Right. Yes. I mean, it's been 10 days since the initial reports that he was hired came out last Monday. Everybody was kind of waiting on an announcement all of last week. We finally got it on Thursday. And then, of course, the winter weather rolls through over the weekend. So Robert Saleh will finally be introduced today. And we're going to spend a lot of the show on that. What do we want to hear from Robert Saleh? And as you said, he's going to win it. He seems like one of those guys who very charismatic. He's going to command the room when he steps up there. I have no doubt that he's going to win the opening press conference. It doesn't really matter, but we'll talk about some of the things that we want to hear from Robert Saleh and Mike Borgonzi today during that press conference. But let's start, Parker, with some of the new staff additions the Titans have made. Brian Daboll, of course, was the big news, and I need to make sure I'm pronouncing it right. Daboll. It's Daboll like table. I heard Joe struggling with that at the end of the show, too. It's going to take a little bit of time to adjust to that. But he did make 3 new additions to the offensive staff. And maybe a question that needs to be asked to Robert Saleh about the offensive staff is it being done in tandem with Brian Daboll? Because 2 of the new additions came over directly from the Giants. So I would think that Brian Daboll has a large voice in who's going to be on his offensive staff. But Carmen Brasillo, offensive line coach coming over from the Giants, also was with the Raiders previously. Shea Tierney at quarterbacks coach, and then Greg Lewis coming over from the Ravens at wide receivers coach. He was also with the Chiefs for a long time, coinciding with Mike Borgonzi. So those are your connections there. Parker, initial thoughts? I struggle to dive too deep into the positional coaching things. I don't know enough about these guys and what they've done, but based on what I've seen, Carmen Brasillo has done a nice job, whether it was with the Raiders this past year with the Giants. And I think overall that's being sold as a win for the Titans to get somebody like that, which, we'll take it. Brian Callahan or Bill Callahan didn't work out. Maybe getting somebody different in the building can get the most out of this offensive line unit.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know much about these assistant coaches. I do know Greg Lewis is very respected in the league, from his time with the Ravens, times with the Chiefs. I know Brasillo, and I'm still trying to get good at pronouncing these names. That's Brasillo, right?
Brasillo, yes.
Brasillo, yes. I know that he came over with Dayball in New York. Still don't know much about him. We will get to learn more, as we continue to go along this long off season that we have ahead of us. But initial thoughts makes sense. On the surface, they seem like good hires, so we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and then Shea Tierney is the quarterbacks coach. We're going to spend a little more time specifically on him later in the show, but he's a guy who's kind of been Brian Daboll's guy over the last 5 years or so, maybe even longer. I was looking, it might even date back to Alabama that they cross paths. So I think that Tierney is somebody that Daboll trusts. Maybe that's somebody who's part of that quote-unquote succession plan that the Titans have. But also, you wonder, there's a whole lot that goes into this, right? Of Robert Saleh can have his succession plan for the offensive coordinator position of, all right, we have Brian Daboll. He's an experienced guy who's developed young quarterbacks before. We really like where he is with Cam Ward. But let's say they have a great season and Daboll gets a head coaching job. Wouldn't Daboll want to take that succession plan with him to his next spot? Like, let's say he ends up going to Washington or something like that. Commanders struggle this year. They fire Dan Quinn and he goes to Washington. The Titans can say all they want that, oh, we have this succession plan, but are those offensive coaches going to be more loyal to Brian Daboll than they would be to Robert Saleh? There's a whole lot that goes into this. So that's a big question that I think needs to be asked to Robert Saleh about the, again, quote unquote, succession plan that we've heard so much about.
Yeah, because the thinking is Robert Saleh, while being the head coach, is mainly, focused on the defense. He'll be calling plays. That's his background. But he needed a guy with experience, play calling experience, and you get all of that with Brian Daboll, former head coach. So that's the thing with these assistants. I'm sure that is going to come up at some point in the interview about, well, are these guys following Daboll? Are these Daboll's guys? Because he is, after all, probably going to be the head coach of the offense. So I'm sure that's going to come up at some point in the presser.
Yeah, that was something that we talked about all week. Is that's one of the main things that's been brought up that I really want to know more about, because the question always is, when you have a young quarterback, how can you get the most out of him? How can you develop him into a franchise guy? And the coaching is a massive part of it. Now, you need weapons. He's got to have the talent inside him too, and the will to be great. We think we've seen that from Cam Ward, but coaching is a big part of it. You've got to have structure for him. And if Brian Daboll is a good fit and has to leave after 1 year because he gets a head coaching job, I really do want to know what this, again, succession plan that Robert Saleh apparently sold Mike Borgonzi and ownership on in his interview. So that's going to be a big question. And I know TD, when he came on with us yesterday, said that's a question he's going to ask Robert Saleh. So that's one of the main things that I am going to want to hear from Robert Saleh today. I think it's an important day. Again, the press conference itself isn't a huge deal. Almost every new head coach, new GM wins the press conference. I heard Robbie and Joe saying how great Brian Callahan's introductory press conference was, and Rand Carthon. That might have been Rand Carthon's only good press conference that he did while he was employed by the Titans, because most of them were utter disasters. But yes, his opening
might have been one of the few that he did.
Yeah, he didn't speak a ton. And honestly, it might have been a good thing. What press conference was it that? It was when they fired Vrabel and they just stuck Rand Carthon up there to answer questions. That was just a complete disaster. But his opening press conference was pretty good. Winning the press conference does not matter, but it is an important day. We've talked pretty much since the season ended about how this is one of, if not the most important offseason in a very long time for the Titans. They've got the young quarterback. He showed growth down the stretch. You've got the new stadium coming up in 2027. You have to get these decisions right. Every decision you make this offseason is going to, teeter that balance one way or another of whether this is a rebuild that takes another 5 years, or if you can be one of those teams that's able to turn it around quickly and get back into playoff contention. I think 2026 is probably a stretch, but by 2027, when the new stadium opens, you head into that 2027 season with hope that this team can contend in the AFC South again. Every decision you make is massive. And I really do like what they've done so far. Robert Saleh, I think, was a solid choice at head coach. He can be that program builder, culture setter that you have been looking for, because Brian Callahan really didn't do that. You bring in an experienced offensive coordinator with Brian Daboll. I think the coaching staff that they're building has a lot of experience, and I do like some of the different connections that we've seen. It's not all Robert Saleh's guys. It's not all Brian Daboll's guys. It's not all Mike Borgonzi's guys. They're bringing together guys from different backgrounds who hopefully can get the most out of this roster. But this is a massive offseason, and it's a big day. Robert Saleh being introduced. I know I'm excited to hear what he has to say, and I know Titans fans are excited as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to text or call. Our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Matthew in Nashville says, does the fact that most of them are bald make any difference to you guys? I think that is one of the funniest things is that it's not exclusively bald guys, but it's pretty close. Brasillo, Dable, Saleh, is it White Cotton, the defensive line coach?
Yep.
I mean, they clearly do have a type when they're hiring their coaches this year. It's been pretty funny to see.
Yeah, I know. I saw Paul Kaharski tweet out something last night about how he was in favor of this because a majority of these guys were bald just like he was. So, uh, on a serious note, though, I feel like I have more questions than I have answers when it comes to this presser because I want to know, you know, when Robert Saleh was brought in for, I believe it was his second interview. It was so he had two interviews, if I'm not mistaken. One was virtual and one was in person. That was the
No, as far as we know, he only had the one. He was
right.
supposed to
Okay.
have the virtual one on the Sunday after they were eliminated, and they decided to cancel it and just bring him in person. And
Right.
then by the end of that interview, he was hired.
That's okay. That's where I got tripped up. But anyways, on the in-person interview, when he really sold him, he said something that wooed the brass, the front office. I know that he presented a plan of how he was going to develop a Cam Ward, and I'm sure that was one of the first questions that was asked. And I know he presented a backup plan as well. So where does Mike McDaniel fall into all this? Because if I had to guess, that probably was his first option given the ties in San Francisco. And I know Brian Daboll was probably in there as well. So I wonder if that was the backup plan. Well, what happens if Brian Daboll gets hired away in a year, like you mentioned? So that's I'm just thinking about this through a lens of what's going to happen with Cam Ward. That's really all I'm concerned about.
And that has to be the main question. We've had the Belichick Brady conversation all week long because Belichick not a first ballot Hall of Famer, and a lot of people are saying, "Well, how good was Belichick really? He had the quarterback." Belichick's a really good coach, and he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer, but that's beside the point. The quarterback is the most important person in an NFL franchise. Like, if you can find the quarterback, everything else becomes a whole lot easier. As we've seen with the Chiefs the last couple of years, those rosters have not exactly been Super Bowl rosters, but they had the quarterback to will them to the Super Bowl, to winning the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Not saying that Cam Ward is going to be Patrick Mahomes, but if he becomes a franchise quarterback, everything else falls into place easier. And so that's why everything that you do has to come with the question, is this the best thing for your quarterback right now? And I can't wait to hear what Robert Saleh has to say about Cam Ward and about his plan for Cam Ward as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'll talk more about that on the other side. Robert Saleh going to be introduced at 2 p.m. today over at St. Thomas Sports Park. Matthew in Nashville also asking, do any of y'all have power back yet at your houses? I have not been home in a week, but I've been told that we still have power. And I do want to, again, put out there, hope everybody is staying safe and warm. I know that the after effects of this storm have continued throughout the entire week. So hopefully power coming back soon. Hope everybody out there is staying safe with the winter weather. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Robert Saleh being introduced today. We'll continue the conversation on the other side. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025, the game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you on this Thursday. Not just any Thursday, too. It is the day Robert Saleh is introduced as the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans. That is coming up at 2 p.m. We will have reaction throughout the day here on 1025, the game. And Parker, we said it in the first segment. Winning the press conference means absolutely nothing. There have been so many coaches out there who have sounded great. Everybody leaves the press conference feeling like we've got the guy, and it doesn't work out. Actions mean much more than words. So I'm not going to take much from this press conference and say, yeah, Saleh, that's the head coach this team has been needing. But I think there are some questions that need to be answered. You said it. You've got more questions than answers right now. And I think there are a lot of things that need to be sorted out with Robert Saleh, and it starts with Cam Ward. You have to have short and long-term plans for your quarterback. Short-term, Brian Daboll. I'm with you. I want to hear how that relationship ended up becoming a thing. Was this, hey, Saleh and Daboll, they got together, they commiserated about being being coaches of the New York teams and struggling up there, and they were friends and decided, hey, what if we put our forces together? Daboll's a great offensive coach. Saleh's been a good defensive coach. Let's put it all together and see if we can make this work in Tennessee. Or was this something where, Daboll interviewed Friday before Saleh came in on Monday? And was this Borgonzi, hey, we really like Brian Daboll. If you get hired as head coach, maybe he's your OC. So I'd like to hear more about that relationship. And with Daboll, again, the main question that you have is what happens if he gets a head coaching job after the first year? And we've got a couple of texts on this on the text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Pegram's Finest says, do we hear ourselves? We're having concerns that he might be too good and will get hired away after a season. This is such a defeatist mentality and the most low-T mindset ever. Skyler says, if Daboll gets a head coaching job next year, then that means the Titans got 7 to 9 wins and Ward looks good. Also, Saleh is tied in the Shanahan and LaFleur tree. We should be confident that he can bring in the next man up at OC. So putting those two things together, Pegram's Finest, I get what you're saying, that you shouldn't be worried about losing your offensive coordinator because I guess that means you're hoping that he's bad enough that he sticks around. But you do have to be prepared. That's when you hire a defensive head coach and you have a young quarterback that you're trying to develop, there has to be some sort of plan for what you're going to do if that OC leaves. Now, if you had a 10-year veteran in there and you bring in a defensive head coach, I think you feel better about, all right, no matter who the OC is, we have the quarterback. He's experienced. He can figure it out no matter who his play caller is. But you have a second-year quarterback who already has had two different play callers in his first season in the NFL. You'd like to have some sort of consistency, and I think that means you have to have a plan if Daboll does end up being good enough to get a head coaching job next year. That's what you're hoping for, honestly, right? Like, you hope that you are good enough and Cam Ward looks like a star in the making and Daboll gets a head coaching job next year. But when that happens, you have to have a plan because this isn't a 1-year thing for Cam Ward, right? Like, Cam Ward isn't going to be a finished product after year 2. Even if he looks really good this year, you're still going to have to develop him. And that's why it's important to find out if Brian Daboll is good enough and gets a head coaching job next year, what does Robert Saleh plan to do to continue the development of the young quarterback?
Two things. One, I am very interested to know how this Daboll thing came about because I don't know where they exactly crossed paths during their coaching careers outside of the fact that they both coached in New York at the same time. And if you remember that Hard Knocks episode where they played each other in the preseason, by they, I mean the Jets and the Giants, they absolutely hated each other. And there was that exchange between Aaron Rodgers and that defensive lineman from the Giants. I can't even remember his name, but it was hilarious. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I know Chase has come on, Chase and Big Joe, and talked about, well, if Brian Daboll is so good that he gets hired away, just go get another guy. Well, if only it were that simple, because it sounds so easy to say, but it's actually a lot harder to do. if you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, it's just been one coach after the other. It's been a offensive coordinator carousel. Jalen Hurts has had 10 different offensive coordinators. When they are finally able to hire one, because it appears nobody wants the job, but when they're able to actually hire an offensive coordinator for Jalen Hurts, that'll be his 10th offensive coordinator since his time at Alabama. And with a rookie quarterback, or was a rookie, he'll be in his second year. You're right. It's not going to be a 1 year, all right, Cam Ward's fixed. He's ready to go take on the league. That's not how this is going to work. So it is one thing to say, well, just go get another guy. It is a completely different thing to actually go and hire somebody that can continue where Daboll left off.
Well, and I do agree with Skylar that Saleh does have the connections with a lot of the up-and-coming names, I'm sure. He's been in that Shanahan, LaFleur tree for years and has relationships with those guys. So I do think that is a positive of, all right, Robert Saleh shouldn't have much of a hard time getting some candidates together to take over. But you do need to have, you need to feel pretty confident you know who that guy is if Brian Daboll does move on. 9926 says you worry about Daboll getting a head coach job when, if it happens. Until then, just be happy he's here. I don't think you can have that mindset. Like, yes, Brian Daboll, I think, is a home run hire for Cam Ward this year. That's exactly what you needed for your young quarterback this year. But if you don't worry about it until it happens, you're going to be trying to play catch up at that point. And the reason we're having this conversation is because in Albert Breer's report of what happened to get Robert Saleh the job, that 5-hour interview last Monday at St. Thomas Sports Park, apparently one of the main things that sold the Titans on Robert Saleh as the head coach was his succession plan with the offensive staff if his offensive coordinator is hired somewhere else. So I'd like to know what that is. I feel like that's not too crazy to say. If that's something that was so important to the Titans ownership and to Mike Borgonzi that his plan helped him get the job, I'd like to know what that is and how he plans to approach it if Brian Daboll does get a head coaching job next year.
Yeah, so it's clearly important to the front office, and this is just me. I don't have any insider information on this. I'm just speaking personally. I wonder if Brian Daboll was the original backup plan, and I wonder if Mike McDaniel was the original option. Now, if Saleh's asked that today, he's not going to answer that because for obvious reasons, but you do have to consider that is such a nice world to live in. Well, Brian Daboll is here. Let's just enjoy it while it's here. Brian Daboll's not Josh McDaniel. Josh McDaniel's already had 2 stints as a head coach, did not go well. I think he is stuck in New England as the offensive coordinator, and he's a great offensive coordinator. And I think that's why the Patriots have had a lot of success this year. But Brian Daboll, literally, the day that he was officially hired as the Titans OC, had a head coaching job with the Raiders. So if he's getting head coaching interviews now, if he does well in year one, I promise you he's going to get more head coaching interviews.
No, 100%. And I agree with you that I don't think we're going to get too much of a look into the process of hiring Brian Daboll. I would like to know more about the relationship, and I think maybe we'll get some of that.
And I'm sure that'll be the focus today. We're just thinking long term.
Right. But if Mike McDaniel was the number one choice, which is, very realistic given the reports that came out right after Saleh got hired of Saleh's been telling people that if he gets another head coaching job, he wants Mike McDaniel as his offensive coordinator. They're not going to say that. It's not going to be, Daboll was our second choice, but we're happy that we were able to at least get him. But I would like to know more about the relationship there. And again, was it a solid decision to go after Daboll, or was that something that was, I'm not going to say forced onto him, but something that was heavily encouraged of, hey, we really like Brian Daboll for Cam Ward. If you get hired, maybe that's somebody you should really like as your offensive coordinator too. So we will see. That press conference is coming up at 2:00 today. Cannot wait to hear from Robert Saleh for the first time as the head coach of the Titans. And again, already making moves on both sides of the ball with the coaching staff. Aaron Whitecotton on the defensive line has retained some coaches. Tony Oden for the DBs, Luke Stocker, Randy Jordan on the offensive side. And then three names that were reportedly hired yesterday. Carmen Brasillo and Shea Tierney come over from the Giants. Brasillo on the offensive line, Tierney, the QB's coach, and then Greg Lewis, a former Ravens wide receivers coach, will coach the wide receivers for the Titans. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. There is one big position on the coaching staff that has not been filled, and that is defensive coordinator. And I've said before, I don't really care all that much about who the defensive coordinator is, but it still has to be filled. And we'll talk about that search next and who may end up being the guy. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you. Robert Saleh being introduced as the next Titans head coach at 2 p.m. today. Excited for that. And again, keep it right here on 1025 The Game for all of your coverage and reaction. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you. Andrew Allegretta from Vanderbilt is going to join us at 9:45. But looking at this Titans coaching staff, a lot of the big positions that you look for have been filled. Titans have their offensive coordinator. They've got their special teams coordinator. They've got their offensive line coach, quarterback. Aaron Whitecotton, who got an interview as the Titans defensive coordinator, is the D-line coach. But that DC job is still open. And Parker, there's one guy who the Titans have interviewed that I keep coming back to. And again, I don't think the defensive coordinator matters all that much if Robert Saleh is calling the plays. But there can be advantages to bringing a coach in. Relationships with players, and having a specific expertise on the defensive side. And that is why I like Al Harris from the Bears. I think he is kind of a perfect final puzzle piece to this defensive staff. You've got Robert Saleh, who has proven to be a great play caller on the defensive side of the ball. But his main specialty is linebackers, right? That's where he came up. He was a linebackers coach with the Jaguars. His specialty is at the linebackers. Whitecotton is a defensive line coach, but possibly qualified to be a defensive coordinator type guy. And that's why he got an interview for the Titans as the DC. Al Harris is the DB's coach and passing game coordinator with the Bears. The Bears led the league in interceptions this year. Previously, he was with the Dallas Cowboys, who led the league in interceptions for the previous 4 years while he was there. I think Al Harris kind of puts this defensive staff together. You've got Whitecotton on the defensive line, Saleh, plus whoever your linebackers coach is. I know there's been talk about KJ Wright, who's with the 49ers, and then Al Harris with the DBs, along with Tony Oden. I think that is a great defensive staff, and it gives you everything of what you need. Plus, Kevin Byard's a free agent. Not saying KB could come in here and I don't know if he would be the same guy who just led the league in interceptions. Eventually, there's going to be a step back, but I would love to bring Kevin Byard back, and I think bringing Al Harris here might open the door to do that.
Yeah, and it's pretty normal, too, that passing game coordinators become defensive coordinators, but I'd like that because you'd have a coach for, all three levels of the defense. Yeah, it's ultimately Robert Saleh's scheme, so the scheme is never really going to go anywhere, but his experiences with the linebackers. So you'd have a guy for your secondary and Al Harris, who, really outside of Kevin Byard, people like Jaquan Brisker and all that they had in the secondary. I'm blanking on some of the other names, but Chicago's secondary was fantastic. So that is a guy that I'd absolutely love to bring in as the defensive coordinator. And then Whitecotton, his experience with the defensive line. And I know a lot of his success in Dallas came from Micah Parsons, but if you think about really how bad Dallas's defense was, one of the mainstays was the defensive line. And when they traded Micah Parsons, getting Kenny Clark, and then trading with the Jets and getting Quinnen Williams, that defensive line was still pretty solid. So that's a hire to be excited about for sure.
Yeah, they've had talent on that defensive line. It wasn't just Micah Parsons. Adigi Zua was kind of a guy who was maybe not as well known, and he developed into a really good player on that front. They got Quinnen Williams for the end of that season. So I do like the Aaron Whitecotton hire. And we've been going through all the bald guys. Al Harris might have enough hair for everybody. I'm looking at his hair.
Hire him now.
Go like maybe that's what they were doing. They have a hair quota and they could only go so high. So they got all the bald guys so they can hire Al Harris as the defensive coordinator. And again, the KB thing is not everything. I think Harris, you hire him because he's a good coach that, again, kind of gives you that puzzle piece at all three levels of the defense of guys who are specialists, and they can oversee those groups while you have your specific DBs coach, Tony Oden, who's sticking around, and while you have a linebackers coach. And I'm sure Aaron Whitecotton will have an assistant defensive line coach. But those three guys can really give you specialists at all three levels. But the Kevin Byard part of it is also just a fun idea for me because KB, you look back and obviously didn't end the way that everyone hoped it would. That's a homegrown guy who went to college at MTSU, a third round pick who turned into an all pro safety, fan favorite, and you trade him away. I think, similarly to the Mike Vrabel stuff, like, I think you could look and say maybe that was the right move when it happened. But now you look back and see, oh, Kevin Byard was an all pro and just led the league in interceptions 2 years later. Maybe that wasn't the right decision from the Titans. So getting to have him come back and be one of the players that maybe leads you into the new stadium and he can retire as a Titan, I think that would be so cool. And again, it's not a reason to hire Al Harris, but it would be kind of a cherry on top if you're able to get him as your defensive coordinator
and bring Kevin Byard back home. And let's not act like he had what he led the league in takeaways last year for a single player.
I think he had 7 interceptions this year.
Yeah, so he's still playing very good football, and you could bring him back and allow him to retire as a Titan, kind of like one of the old guards coming back and leading you into the new stadium. I would have no problem with it. I want to know how expensive he would be, but I know like Alontae Taylor is a guy that I'd absolutely love to bring in for the secondary as well, over from the Saints. So if you're able to get those two, I'd be really happy.
Well, don't worry. We are going to get into some free agency in the 10 o'clock hour because the ESPN top 50 free agent rankings came out yesterday, and we're going to go through some of the main guys who the Titans could look at. But focusing on the coaching staff here, Titans have filled out a lot of positions. In fact, is the entire offensive coaching staff full at this point? They've got Tierney is the quarterback's coach. You've got Randy Jordan at running backs. Greg Lewis is your wide receivers coach. Luke Stocker at tight end. Carmen Brasillo is the offensive line coach. So I think you've pretty much got all your bases covered. Obviously, there's going to be other support staff and assistant position group coaches, but it's kind of crazy how fast that all came together. Brian Dable was hired as the offensive coordinator less than 48 hours ago, and it looks like the Titans already have their entire offensive staff set.
Yeah, so it's really just about finishing the defensive side, and been a productive week for Saleh. Even though we haven't heard from him yet, we will hear from him today. But the staff is coming together.
Yes, and we will hear from Robert Saleh coming up at 2 o'clock. We will spend much more time on Robert Saleh's introductory press conference, what we're expecting to hear from him, plans for Cam Ward. And one thing I do want to focus on, and we'll do this later on in the show, is what we hear from Mike Borgonzi about the process of this. You look back and see multiple coaches say they're coming to the Titans as a finalist interview, but they take the job that they were at just one day before. Robert Saleh wasn't even supposed to be in the building, virtual interview on Sunday, but he comes in and 24 hours later he's hired. I want to know more from Mike Borgonzi about what this process looked like and why Saleh was fast-tracked from eliminated to virtual interview to in-person interview to hired in such a short period of time. So we'll get into that later on in the show as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. But coming up next, Andrew Allegretta from Vanderbilt will join us. We're going to talk pretty much all things Commodores with Andrew. It's in between seasons for him, the voice of football, the voice of baseball. We'll talk a little Diego Pavia, who's down at the Senior Bowl this week. We'll talk some basketball, and we'll get ready for baseball, which is just 2 weeks away. We are 2 weeks away from college baseball starting. So we'll get into all of that with Andrew on the other side. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you on your Thursday morning. And we are pleased to be joined on our phone lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by the voice of Vanderbilt football and baseball, Andrew Allegretta. Andrew, thanks for joining us. I know you're gearing up for baseball season here. I can't believe it's only 2 weeks away.
Yes, this feels like college baseball season at its finest. It really does, though. Like, as soon as we get some snow, it feels like it's time. Just the way the calendar works. It's an awkward calendar for college baseball, but we're getting there for sure.
It is crazy to look up and see February 13th is opening day for Vanderbilt against TCU. We're going to get into some baseball, but big news this week, Diego Pavia down there at the Senior Bowl as he prepares for the draft, hoping to hear his name called in April. And Andrew, I know a lot has been talked about with his height. I mean, I don't know if this is a novel idea that schools don't list the actual heights for their players, but for some people, apparently it is. But Diego Pavia seemingly has been impressing down there despite being listed at 5'9" and 7/8 inches.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of all of this. Part of me, Jake, feels like a lot of the lightning rod sort of controversy for Diego Pavia is the fact that people are just tuning into the Diego Pavia show, like later in the season, so to speak. But yeah, I think everybody will list their roster a little bit differently than what guys actually are. I think that's sort of, been going that way for forever. Or for some particular sports, maybe you want to be seen as a little bit shorter because for whatever reason, that's not the ideal draft height or whatever it is. I don't know that I care too much about what Diego Pavia's height is from my perspective, from a Vanderbilt perspective, from an understanding of who Diego Pavia was for the better part of his 2 seasons, which was someone with a titanic heart, incredible instincts, really good skill. The fact that he's been successful at the Senior Bowl, I don't think surprises anybody here with Vanderbilt in the slightest, right? Because, and Clark has said as much, it's like, we're not going to doubt Diego Pavia anymore. If you think he's got a fault, he's going to find a way to overcome it. Now, at some point, does he butt up against some limitations? I don't know. Is 5'9" and 7/8 the ideal height for an NFL quarterback? I mean, I guess I understand the limitations there, but we'll see. I just, for all of us that have gotten caught up in the height or whatever it happens to be with Diego, and I understand all of it. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, like, we have watched for 2 years someone that has absolutely defied any sort of expectation over and over and over again, and that's been a wonderful, wonderful thing to watch.
Talking with Andrew Allegretta, voice of Vanderbilt football and baseball. And Andrew, I know you're not around the men's basketball team quite as much, but you called a few of their games on the SEC Network Plus. And watching this team, I think the response the last couple of games has been just wonderful from Mark Byington's bunch. You lose 3 straight after starting 17-0, but this team has roared back a 25-point win over Kentucky. I think they've done a nice job of answering some of the questions. What have you seen from this group as they've been able to maneuver through some adversity over the last couple of weeks?
So I think you're right. I mean, I am not surprised by the response. I think adversity is a good thing, especially in the course of a 30-some-odd game season. And I will always think back, to put it into baseball terms, about how Tim Corbin talks about Vanderbilt's 2013 squad, which had the best regular season record in the history of the SEC, hit their first real adversity in the postseason and lost. Like, you would rather deal with some adversity during the regular season so the guys can figure out how to handle it, how to overcome it, and now you're ready to go come postseason time. I mean, our team dealt with a ton of adversity for Vanderbilt baseball, and they knew how to handle it, and they got hot at the right time. So I'm glad to see they've overcome it. I'm not surprised by it. The fact that they've been able to do it, Jake, obviously an extended period of time without Frankie Collins, and now Duke Miles misses the Kentucky game. And to me, the way they're built, it has always been such an impressive roster construction to me. And we've talked with Coach Byington about that on Commodore Hour, about just how we put together this roster and scouting and talking with people. And of course, these days dealing with agents. Like, you've got so much depth of scoring. You've got depth of opportunity. I get that perhaps Florida was able to out-rebound them and all of that sort of stuff. But man, if you've got 5, 6, 7 guys like they do that on a given day could be your top scorer, that is such an unbelievable luxury with incredible backcourt play with Tanner and the way that Nickel shoots the ball. I like their ability to handle and respond things because, and not just over the course of a season, right, Jake? Like in games, like if you're expecting Nickel to have a great game and all of a sudden it's off, okay, well here's A.K. Okereke or here's Devin McLaughlin that's going to step out and hit some threes, or Tyler Tanner is going to continue to do what he does. I love basketball teams that are constructed like theirs, which have so many options to go to. It allows you to respond both during the season and in games.
Andrew, I just really wanted to touch on this Diego Pavia height thing just one more time, because I remember when I was in college, they used to measure, like they would take our height in our cleats, and then they would take our weight while we're fully padded. So I think it is hilarious how many people think that Vanderbilt lied about his measurements. Yeah. They always do that just to try to get the max measurement.
It's not about Vanderbilt lying. It's not about which I would hardly characterize it as such, right, Parker? It's not even about this grand idea that heights and weights are, a little bit off on official rosters. It's about, I mean, like, call it a spade, right? It's whether or not you like Diego Pavia. Like, if he's your cup of tea, you're going to sit there and defend him. If Diego's not your cup of tea, which, by the way, I don't think he really cares about, he's going to do it himself.
He doesn't.
Then you're going to sit there and pick every little thing apart. It's not terribly complicated. This isn't about heights. This isn't about anything. This is about whether or not you're in the camp that likes the way that Diego Pavia goes about his business, or you're not. From our perspective, we have always seen a first-class person in the practice rooms, in the weight rooms. We have seen someone that carries himself with a ton of respect around his teammates. He's got the utmost respect of his teammates. We saw what he did on the field. He's clearly a winner. And if you can't relate to the feeling of I've been doubted because of X and I'm going to overcome it with Y, that is what it is. Like we are in awe often from a Vanderbilt perspective of how Diego has been able to lift himself up. It's not a quarterback. He goes to JUCO. He goes whatever, right? We know the story. So this isn't about heights and weights. This is whether or not you vibe with Diego Pavia. That's the whole thing.
What have you made of what Vanderbilt has done in the offseason, specifically in the transfer portal?
I think they went about it a lot like they did a season ago, which they said we're going to build along the line of scrimmage. We're going to make a point of emphasis with the offensive line. We're going to make a point of emphasis with the defensive line. One of the things, and I'm not minimizing Parker, right? Like I've had this conversation with Jake, and I think we've talked about it some, like on the SEC Network Plus broadcast that I'll do with, True Maddox or Shane Foster or whatever. Like the transfer portal has been huge for Vanderbilt. Like we're not going to minimize its importance, but what Vanderbilt has done to me goes beyond that, right? Because they've been able to get really good coaches in place because of Candace Lee and the support of Chancellor Diermeyer. B, they've been able to get the resources that they need for the transfer portal. And C, they're still going to continue to recruit and develop from the high school ranks. I still look at all of these teams for Vanderbilt, and you're looking at one of, if not the most significant player on every team being a high school player. Go talk to Jake. The two most important players right now are high school kids, and Michaela Blakes and Aubrey Galvin. And beyond that, too, because Sasha Washington was one, or Mitchell was another. With the men's basketball team, we love watching Tyler Tanner, high school kid. Huge move by Vanderbilt to get Jared Curtis, a local high school kid, right? And then on the baseball team, we know the way that Tim Corbin has first and foremost been able to develop from within. And again, we can parse through that, and it's not like universal. I think they have done a great job through the transfer portal, and they've been able to diversify their efforts. Because I just, when you are exclusively through the transfer portal, and I'm going on a bit of a ramble here, so I apologize. The volatility is really high. So you can get a whole new crop of players. And if you missed on personality types in a given year, you're going to have a bad year. Now you can flip it quickly, which is great. And if you miss on a high school recruiting class, that can really set you back. So it's not all column A, not all column B, but I think that's what I appreciate about Vanderbilt's effort across the board, is that they've been able to balance and diversify the way that they're building and constructing their rosters, from great coaches to high school to transfer portal, and just getting it all done across the board.
Talking with Andrew Allegretto, voice of Vanderbilt football and baseball. And before we get you out of here, Andrew, do have to ask a baseball question. Let's talk about a transfer on the baseball team, and that's Connor Fennell in his second season with Vanderbilt. You look through this roster, and I think you can see where the production's going to come at the plate. The returners, the transfers that have been brought in. But pitching, maybe more of a question mark. Fennell going to have to build off of what was a really fun year to watch last year, where he was a third-team All-American. He needs to be a guy that Vanderbilt can rely on heading into this season.
Yes, and I'm with you. He was a ton of fun. I'm not sure he's like apples to apples comparison to Diego Pavia, but again, here's someone that's whatever his height is. He's a little on the skinnier side. He throws a fastball that's sitting 88, and he's got no fear. So you appreciate watching his story. And I do think he's going to have to be a really big factor. But what's really interesting about the pitching staff, and I'm looking forward to watching it develop, is Austin Nye, who was a freshman last year, who got the start for Vanderbilt in the SEC championship game. Feels like he's poised for one of those really significant next steps. I don't know if it's akin to Tyler Tanner or not. But he's got the stuff to be, no one's going to call him Jack Leiter or Kamar Rocker or whatever, but he's got the ability to elevate into a weekend role and be a really huge factor. And then there's a really interesting group of freshmen too, that all of them are really talented. Now, who can settle in and be confident when it's time to throw when the lights are on? We'll find that stuff out. But you're talking about multiple guys that can throw triple digits and really wicked stuff. So it's a really interesting group. I'm with you on Fennell. He's important. But I do believe they've got really intriguing depth that we just don't know about yet. So it's going to be fun to watch. And I will say, as we wrap up very quickly, thinking about everyone that has had to deal with the ice storm, you guys have been awesome and stayed on the air the way that you guys have stayed on the air throughout the course of all of this. So to everybody that's gone through a rough patch and continues to kind of work their way through it, certainly know that all of Nashville is thinking about you guys.
100%. Thinking of everyone out there. Hope everyone is staying warm, and hoping the power comes back on for anyone still without it in the next couple of days. Andrew, as always, appreciate you coming on. I'm sure we'll talk again before baseball season, but opening day, 2 weeks from tomorrow, Friday, February 13th, against TCU in Arlington, Texas. Andrew, thanks for coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
Jake Parker, thank you so much, Jake. Best of luck against Ole Miss. Coming up tomorrow?
Tomorrow afternoon. Appreciate it. That'll be a 2:00 tip over on 94.9 The Fan. Andrew Allegretto, voice of Vanderbilt football and baseball, joining us here on the program. When we come back, we'll get back into the Titans. ESPN released its top 50 free agents for this upcoming year. We will go through and take a way too early look at free agency and some guys that we would pick for the Titans. We'll do that next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, second hour on this Thursday. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Big thanks to Andrew Allegretta for joining us in that last segment, talking some Vandy football, basketball, baseball. And again, I can't believe baseball season is 2 weeks away, flying by, and hopefully no more winter weather the rest of the way until we lead up to games over at the Hawk. But let's get back into the Titans here yesterday. And we talked a little bit about this with Corey Curtis. ESPN released their top 50 free agents. This is from Matt Bowen over at ESPN. If anybody's wondering, there's only one current Titan on the list. Chigakonkwo is 39th. But I thought be a good idea to take a way too early look at some names that the Titans could be looking at in free agency. Most cap space in the NFL at over $100 million, and that does not even include the savings that they're likely going to get on guys like L'Jarius Sneed, maybe Calvin Ridley. So the Titans are going to be loaded with cap space and needing a whole lot of players. So I said, let's pick 3 guys from this list that we think would be good fits for the Titans to start building up this roster. Parker, I don't know. I didn't actually confirm with you, but do you have 3 names on this list that you're thinking of?
Yeah, so I just pulled it up, but
okay,
3.
I can go first if you want to.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Okay, so all 3 of the guys that I'm going to say, I've already brought up on this show, so it shouldn't be much of a surprise to anybody out there who listens. Number 1. And you actually said this in the first hour, Parker, Alontae Taylor. I think Alontae Taylor is a perfect fit for what the Titans need. You need outside cornerbacks. We saw Taylor come into Nashville and make plays over and over. He is currently ranked as the 12th best free agent, according to ESPN, coming over from the Saints. He'll be 27 heading in to next year. He had 4 interceptions, 40 pass breakups, 7 sacks in his 4 seasons with the Saints. I think Alontae Taylor would be a perfect fit for the Titans. Now, there are other cornerbacks out there that I would be perfectly fine with. I think we saw Reek Woolen from the Seahawks. He's had a nice postseason with Seattle, with the exception of the unsportsmanlike taunting penalty he got at the end of the game there. Jalen Watson would be another guy who makes a whole lot of sense coming over from the Chiefs. Crosses over with Mike Borgonzi there. I'm sure Borgonzi had a say in picking him, so I wouldn't hate that. But if I had to pick one corner, it would be Alontae Taylor. He's my number 1. Number 2, another guy I've said, Breece Hall. I am still on the side of you need to move on from Tony Pollard after this season. I like Tony Pollard, but Tony Pollard is a guy who's going to barely get you 1,000 yards, and who knows, with another year of tread on those tires, if he's even going to be able to get that next year. He's $9 million. I think you could get Breece Hall for probably 10 to 12, and he's only going to be 25 heading into next year. I really like Breece Hall. I think if you're looking to upgrade at running back, that's an easy connection to make with him and Robert Saleh. Now, you don't know if him and Robert Saleh got along. That's going to play a role in it as well. But if you're looking for a connection where it's a guy who can upgrade a position that will help out your young quarterback, I really like Breece Hall. He would be my number 2. And then third, a guy that we talked about yesterday, Juwan Jennings. I think Juwan Jennings fits exactly what the Titans need in a free agent outside wide receiver. He's 6'3". He can come in and immediately be your number 2, maybe has to be your number 1 at times, but I think he can be a guy who can be a big personality for you, be a good locker room guy for you, and he's going to make plays for you. Maybe a little more on the expensive side, but I think heading into next year with a wide receiver group that includes a draft pick from one of their first 3 picks, Juwan Jennings, Alec Iamaner, Chim Dike. I really like that group, and I think those 3 guys would be a great start towards getting this roster back to being a contender next year. Parker, your thoughts?
Okay, so Alontae Taylor and Juwan Jennings were both on my list. I would love Breece Hall, but if I'm thinking about most important needs, running back is on there for sure, but it's a little further down the list for me. I would love Breece Hall. If the Titans wanted to move off Tony Pollard and bring in Breece Hall, I'd be totally okay with it. So I like that.
Do you have any other ones that stand out to you looking at
Yes,
this
so I'm going to
list?
go different. I'm going to go a different route just because
Okay, here
you
you go.
said two of mine, so I'm going to present some different options. So my first option for edge rusher. Now, this is assuming that the Titans still get Reuben Bain in the draft or a David Bailey or Arvell Reese, whatever. Jalen
Right.
Phillips from the Eagles. That is a guy
I
that
like
came
that.
over from Miami to Philadelphia and immediately made an impact. And he's fifth on this list of 50 free agents. I would love Jalen Phillips to be a Tennessee Titan next year. However, there is an alternative if you're not able to get him, and that is John Franklin Myers, defensive lineman from the Denver Broncos, a guy that crossed paths with Saleh in New York. So if you're not able to get Jalen Phillips, you might be able to get John Franklin Myers. And John Franklin Myers is 11th on here, and he's 29 years old. So in his prime. I think it would fit the
I like that.
timeline. I think it would fit the timeline. The second option, and I am going receiver here, I'm going Alec Pierce from the Indianapolis Colts. I think Alec Pierce is one of the more underrated receivers in the NFL. I think he's one of those guys that is a true vertical threat, and you may not think that by looking at him, but he's a true vertical threat jump ball guy, made several contested catches last year that kind of made me, wide-eyed. I would love Alec Pierce on the Titans. Plus, I don't know what's going to happen with Calvin Ridley. So I feel like, yeah, Alec Pierce may not be as talented as Calvin Ridley, but at least he's a guy to kind of fill that gap in the vertical passing game. So Alec Pierce is number 2 on my list. And to be honest, Jake, I'm looking at the Breece Hall and I'm very enticed by it. I'm very enticed by Breece Hall. I've been hearing Kyle Pitts too.
See, that Kyle Pitts would make sense. I stayed away from tight end just because I think Gunnar Helm is going to get a little bit more of a runway this year, and they're going to say, all right, he's going to be our guy. Maybe you bring Chig back. I don't know if they're going to go as high as Kyle Pitts, who's probably going to get a decent amount of money. Isaiah Likely I would put in the same boat. But I don't hate the idea of Kyle Pitts. It's one of those I can fix him kind of players. It's like he hasn't worked out for the Falcons, but look at all of the tools he has. I can fix him. I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of one of those fantasy football conversations where you draft Kyle Pitts every year, hoping that, his talent finally he breaks him through that supposed roof that was over him. And he had a great season with the Falcons. So I'm gonna go a different route. I'm gonna go with Jaquan Brisker, safety from the Bears.
Okay.
I feel like you need bodies in the secondary.
See, safety is one of those where I think you like the 3 that you have. Xavier Woods is still under contract for next year.
He has one more year.
I don't know what their plans are for Xavier Woods, but he does have another year under contract. So I think you look and say, all right, we got Amani Hooker, we got Xavier Woods, we've got Kevin Winston. I like that trio. I do think you need another body.
Nashawn Wright from the Bears as well. If Al Harris was hired as defensive coordinator, could bring Nashawn Wright over.
Yeah, and that's another cornerback that you could bring. I do like Brisker. I think it would just depend on the price. Right now, SpotTrack has him at $10 million as his evaluation, which
sitting at 44 on the list.
Those aren't super accurate, but it's close enough.
Like Wan'Dale Robinson is on here too, and I saw that he's supposed to get 18, and then there are reports that he may ask for 25. So it's a $7 million gap. I have no idea.
That's crazy. I mean, yeah, I think you're going to overpay. That's what happens in free agency. Every year, there are guys who get contracts, and you go, what? Dan Moore, for example, last year. I remember walking into the studio right as Dan Moore got signed and saying, who did they just sign for $80 million? But he was the best tackle on the free agent market, and that's the going rate. Like for the Packers, Rasheed Walker is the top tackle on the market. I would say that most people have heard of Rasheed Walker, but if you told them that he was probably going to get $80 million in free agency, I think you'd be a little bit, you'd balk at that. But he's probably going to get $80 million because he's the number 1 tackle on the market. So that's just what happens. The Titans have $100 million in cap space. They're probably going to have to overpay. We can talk about that coming up next because I did look through at least at my guys, and I've got an estimate on your guys too of what it would cost to bring those kind of players in. in terms of what the Titans have at their disposal. So we'll get into that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to text or call. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'd love to hear from you. We are rolling along here in hour number 2, talking Titans' possible free agent targets as ESPN has put out their initial top 50 free agents on the market. Who would you want the Titans to sign? We will get into that coming up next. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up on 2-5 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you on this Thursday. Robert Saleh going to be introduced as the next Titans head coach at 2 o'clock. Again, we'll have coverage throughout the day here on 1025 The Game. Reaction from Chase and Big Joe and DVD. And, of course, we'll be back tomorrow to react to anything that is said by Robert Saleh today. But we're looking at the roster. Titans have a lot of work to do to get this team back to being competitive. But the good news is they have a lot of resources. They got $100 million in cap space. And when you look at $100 million in cap space, first of all, the Titans aren't going to spend all of that. They're not going to go out there and, get 7 of the top 10 free agents or something like that. But I think you expect a couple of high-profile signings. And also, we're about to look through the projected average that Spotrac has. The contracts, when they come out, usually are backloaded in a way that the cap hit in year one isn't the annual average value. So what it ends up being doesn't actually have to be what goes on the cap. So we're going to go through this. We picked our top 3 free agents from ESPN's top 50 free agent list. I went with Breece Hall, Alontae Taylor, and Juwan Jennings, the 7th, 12th, and 28th ranked free agents, according to ESPN. And signing all of those guys, those 3 guys, according to Spotrac, if you use their market value, would be $44.2 million in cap space. That's not even half of what you have. And again,
that's good.
I would expect that the way they format those contracts, you wouldn't even be using that much in your cap space. Gives you plenty of time to go out and get the supplemental free agents that you need, a backup quarterback. Maybe you do bring in another tight end. You probably need more than one cornerback. Linebackers, like you can go get your supplemental guys for your $3, $5, $10 million deals. But I think those are probably the 3 that I look at and say, if you go use a good chunk of your cap space on those 3 guys, that gets you a number 1 cornerback heading into next year, and at least makes the need in the draft not quite as bad. It gives you your top running back who you can pair with Tajay Spears. Maybe Khalil Mullings takes a step forward this year. And it gives you that veteran wide receiver presence that allows you to draft a guy and feel like you still have a go-to target for Cam Ward this year. So I like that, especially with the price it's going to cost. I don't think the Titans are going to be shopping at the very top of the free agent market, like George Pickens, who's going to cost probably $30 million a year. Trey Hendrickson on the edge, who's 31, but is going to cost upwards of $25 million a year. I don't think they're going there, but I think you can go sign guys in the 10 to 12 to $20 million, somewhere in that range, and go get 3 or 4 big pieces that can help accelerate the rebuild of this roster.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I tried to pick some guys that were a little lower down on the list because I just know how it is when it comes to free agency. You're not going to get everybody that's on top. And like they have Trey Hendrickson at 1.
Right.
1, he's going to be really expensive, but 2, that also doesn't fit the Titans timeline right now. So with Alec Pierce, I think it's interesting because they have him at 6. And I'm not sure, Jake, what his asking price would be, but he topped 1,000 yards last year. So did Wan'Dale Robinson, but Wan'Dale Robinson, who seems like a more realistic option just given his New York ties with Brian Daboll, they have him in the 40s. So I wonder how big of a gap or a difference there would be in what they would be asking for in free agency.
Yeah, and Matt Bowen's list is not the end-all be-all, but yes, I see what you're saying of like, we've heard Wan'Dale Robinson has a pretty high asking price. Alec Pierce will too, but we mentioned Robinson yesterday with Corey Curtis, and Robinson being that smaller slot kind of guy, I don't know if it makes a whole lot of sense for the Titans to go get him, even with the Brian Daboll connection. I'd love Alec Pierce. I just don't know if that one's
Alec
as
Pierce
realistic.
can play truly on the outside, so that would help.
Right, he's 6'3".
Yeah, it just depends what the price is.
He's a speed guy. He's a vertical threat, but he is 6'3". He's going to be an outside receiver for you. So I really like Alec Pierce. The way I went through it is those 3 guys that I said, Taylor, Hall, and Jennings, I like them as players. I think they fit needs for the Titans, but you can also see a realistic tie with all of them. Alontae Taylor played his college football at Tennessee, as did Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings from just down the road. And then Breece Hall played for Robert Saleh. So I think you can look and see maybe they would be attracted to the Titans as much as the Titans would want them to come play for them. But that's the way I look at it, looking at the cap. And even if I go through your 3 guys, who some of them were a little bit more expensive, Alec Pierce, Spotrac has him around $20 million per year. Jalen Phillips is about 17 on the edge coming over from Philly. And Nahshon Wright from Chicago is about 16. Even then, if you're just taking the Spotrac values at face value, that's $54 million, somewhere around there, which that's high. It's a lot, but the way you make those contracts, it's not going to end up being that much, and you still have so much space. I think the Titans need to be aggressive in free agency. There are a lot of holes, and because you didn't end up with the number one pick and don't have the ability to trade back and get this haul of draft picks in the first round this year, next year, or multiple seconds, multiple thirds, you do need to use free agency to bring in guys who you feel like can be long-term solutions for this team. And if you're going to do that, you do have to pay, right? Like you're going to have to spend some money. It's just got to be the right decisions, right?
Yeah, how much is Juwan asking for? Juwan, or what's his price?
The spot track says $22 million. That feels high to me.
And like, it's so weird.
Juwan Jennings.
I know this list is not the end all be all, like you said, but Juwan is way down compared to what Alex Pierce is, and Alex Pierce is around 20 mil.
Juwan Jennings this year had 55 catches for 643 yards and 9 touchdowns. Like, I think he's a good player. I don't think it's going to cost $22 million to sign him. Maybe it will, but I think that one's a little bit inflated. The Titans, you have to make the right decisions in free agency because, again, you're not going to be a Super Bowl contender next year. You can look and say, well, look, the Patriots just did it. They went from the 4th overall pick to the Super Bowl in 1 year. That's the anomaly. That's not the expectation. The Titans have to build this roster, I think, for 2027. I think you're trying to get this team ready to be a playoff contender in 2027. So going huge and making moves like they did 2 years ago when they trade for L'Jarius Sneed, you don't give up draft capital for a player this year. But with so much cap space that's available to you, there are guys who are only 24, 25, 26, 27 who you sign this year, they elevate you to maybe a 7-win team, an 8-win team, a 9-win team this year, and they can still be pieces for you moving forward. That's why you don't shop in the Trey Hendrickson aisle. But I think you mentioned Jalen Phillips. I think that's a good move. I also like Odafe Oweh, who's with the Chargers. He was traded over from the Ravens. I'm operating under the assumption, just like you, that the Titans are probably going to draft an edge rusher at number 4. But that doesn't mean you don't need more guys than just a Ruben Bain or a David Bailey. You need more. And there is one guy who I did write down that I think could end up being somebody the Titans look at. And it may contradict what I just said about not shopping in the 31-year-old aisle, but we'll get to it coming up next. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to text or call, our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We're talking free agency for the Titans right now. We will talk some Preds later on in this hour. Preds back in action tonight. They are in New Jersey taking on the Devils. And also back to Robert Saleh's introductory press conference later on, which is coming up at 2 p.m. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 1025, the game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you on this Thursday. Robert Saleh being introduced as the Titans head coach coming up at 2 p.m. today. Excited for that. Can't wait to hear from the newest head coach in the two-tone blue. And again, we will have full reaction to that throughout the day here on the station and tomorrow on the show. Max Hers is with us as he always is for an hour, but we will have plenty of reaction to Robert Saleh's introductory press conference. We'll get back into that in a second, but we are talking free agency for the Titans. Lots of money to be spent, at least $100 million at their disposal in cap space. And I only expect that number to go up with some of the cap casualties that could happen over the next couple of months. But Parker, we went through some of our top guys. Alontae Taylor, Breece Hall, Jawan Jennings were the three that I listed. You went Alec Pierce, Jalen Phillips, Nashawn Wright. Here are a couple of other names that I think maybe a little bit lower down the board, wouldn't cost you quite as much, but could end up being important for you, even on a short-term deal. The right guard position is interesting to me because I don't think you're bringing back Kevin Zeitler. Is Jackson Slater ready to step in and be your starting right guard? I don't know. And you now have a new offensive coordinator, Brian Dable. He brings over Carmen Brasillo. You have to be able to understand that, yeah, these guys didn't pick Jackson Slater. Mike Borgonzi did, but they may not have the same plan for Jackson Slater. Maybe they want to go out in free agency. A guy that I kind of like is Zion Johnson, former first-round pick of the Chargers. He's ranked 33rd on ESPN's list. Spot Track has him at $11 million. I wonder if you could maybe get him on a short-term deal. Maybe 2 years, $25 million, somewhere in there. And he can be kind of your Band-Aid at right guard until either you feel Jackson Slater is ready to take over full-time or you draft somebody else to take that spot. But that is one of the positions that I'm interested to see how the Titans handle is right guard, because we only saw Jackson Slater for a little bit this season. I don't know if he's ready to be that right guard heading into week one. You may have to make a move in free agency to go get somebody to, at the very least, compete with Jackson Slater or to be that right guard next to J.C. Latham next year.
Yeah, I don't know if they plan on drafting a guard to kind of fill the bridge until Jackson Slater's that wouldn't make sense, because they were high on Jackson Slater when they got him in the 5th round. They were very high because he's very versatile. He can play really any position in that interior offensive line triangle. So, and he might even be able to bump out to tackle in an emergency, but I'd feel more comfortable playing him in the interior. But there are several guards like Zion Johnson, Isaac Seumalo from the Steelers.
Yep.
There are a couple that you could get. David Edwards from the Bills. So there are a couple guys that you could go out and get in free agency. I am interested to see how they handle that, though.
Terrell on the text line says Joel Bitonio from the Browns, and maybe that's somebody that could be interesting, kind of basically just redoing the Kevin Zeitler move. Bring in an older guy, 1-year deal, and see if you can Band-Aid it for another year with somebody who's been very successful in the league. I wouldn't hate that.
He's 34 years old, so it probably
right.
You could probably get him for like a 1-year deal, I'm sure.
Right. Kevin Zeitler's 35 now, so it would basically be the exact same thing. You bring in a 34-year-old former All-Pro guard and, a 1-year deal and see what you can do with it. I wouldn't hate that. Something that I saw this morning is with Carmen Brasillo, Jermaine Illuminor has followed him from the Raiders to the Giants as he made his move under Brian Dable, and then Illuminor was a free agent. He's a tackle, but I do wonder at a certain price, maybe that becomes your swing tackle behind Latham and Moore. You need somebody who's more reliable. I thought Ali Udoh did fine this year, but I don't think you can go in there with that as your backup plan with Latham, the injuries he's dealt with, Dan Moore, some inconsistencies. I wouldn't hate Jermaine Illuminor being brought in as a swing tackle. The question is, does he want to be a swing tackle, or does he want to go somewhere where he's going to have the ability to start?
Well, the thinking was if you got him in free agency, I think it was either last year or the year before that he would probably be your starting tackle. So right. I don't know if you get him and he's your swing tackle, That's fantastic. It's a much better option than Aliudo. Aliudo did fine last year, but I can't say that I feel comfortable going into this year in 2026 with him as your immediate option at swing
Right.
tackle. So if you were able to get Jermaine Illuminor as your swing tackle, that is a home run pickup, I think. I mean, it's just like you said. Is he willing to be a backup swing tackle? Because I think he could very
Yeah.
well be a starting tackle.
Yeah, I mean, again, he followed Brasillo from the Raiders to the Giants. We don't know if that's the main reason he moved, but sometimes correlation does equal causation. He's 31, was making $7 million a year with the Giants. Spotrac has him right around $9 million if you bring him in. I think it'd be a good idea to go bring in a guy like that. One injury and Cam Ward might be vulnerable back there again. I think you need to have a safety net back there in case of an injury to Latham or more. And I think Illuminor would be one of the better options out there who I think you could convince to be the swing tackle for you. Like some of the guys at the top of the market, they're going to want to go start. I think Illuminor would be an option for you that would come in, be that third tackle, maybe could bump into guard if you needed him to, if you want to just get your best five out there. But I think that would be a good backup plan for Moore and Latham. Here's a name, Parker, that, again, this would be on a short-term deal. I said earlier that you don't want to go get these aging guys because like Trey Hendrickson, I think he's going to end up signing probably a 3 or 4 year deal at $25 million plus. That's not the market you need to be in. Joey Bosa, I think, could be a very interesting name for the Titans to go and get. I don't know if he would do it, but his brother Nick has played under Robert Saleh for a long time. If Joey Bosa wants to come in and he can be that 4-3 end and show the ropes to a Femi Oladejo, if you draft Ruben Bain or David Bailey, I think that could be a really good veteran leader to help, raise up your prospects, the younger guys who you hope are the future on that defensive line. But Bosa can be that, I don't want to keep using the word Band-Aid, but he can be the guy who is going to help you as a veteran pass rusher, but is also going to be able to be a leader in that room for some of your younger guys.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you could probably get him on a 1 year deal. That's the thing when signing some of these older players. If you are going to do it, it has to be on a short term deal, just because you got to consider the timeline and all this and where they are in their careers. But that is a signing because he did come in and provide a lot of a really good depth for the Bills last year at edge rusher. So that's a guy I'd be fine with.
I think he's ring chasing. I don't think he would come to the Titans. I think he's going to go somewhere where he feels like
that's a good point.
He has a chance to go win. Like he went to the Bills last year. It shows you he probably wanted to go somewhere where he has a chance to win a championship. That would be my guess. That's where he ends up, is either back with the Bills or somebody like that. But I wouldn't hate it if Nick Bosa talks with his brother and says, hey, Robert Saleh can get the most out of you, and maybe you could cash in for one last decent sized contract late in your career. I think I could get behind that as a guy to be one of your starters at the beginning of the season, but maybe as your younger guys continue to develop, he fades into a rotational pass rusher role. Ron on the text line says, is Pickens off the table, and do you think he would cost too much?
Oh, I don't know.
A ton. Like he's going to probably get the most expensive free agent deal of anybody this year. The reports are like 4 years, $120 million is what he's going to be looking for. I wouldn't do it if I'm the Titans. I think that's a lot for a guy who has proven to be inconsistent at times during his career. He's coming off a great season, but he's been inconsistent, and he's a little bit of a liability in the locker room. Like there's just some weird stuff that goes on with George Pickens. I would say somebody else is going to give him a lot of money. It shouldn't be the Titans, given where this team is right now. But that's a Mike Borgonzi question, right? Like if he really values George Pickens and thinks that he could end up being an elite wide receiver for Cam Ward, maybe they make a run at him. He would not be at the top of my list, though, Parker.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When George Pickens is healthy and when he has his head on his shoulders, I think George Pickens is a top 5 receiver in the game, or at least has the capability to be that. It. I'm with you. I would not do it just because that's a lot of money, and just because you have the most cap space in the NFL doesn't mean you go and spend it on one player. So you
Right.
kind of need to spread the wealth. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. This team is not in a position to go out and get. They're not one player away. They need several. And I thought George did a much better job in his 1 year in Dallas than he did before that in Pittsburgh with keeping his head straight. So if I'm the Cowboys, I'm trying to bring him back. But if I'm the Titans, I wouldn't do it.
Yep, I agree with you there. I think he probably ends up back in Dallas, whether that's on the franchise tag or on a long-term extension. But even if he hits the market, I don't think the Titans should be involved in that. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Terrell on the text line says Jalen Phillips. That was the guy Parker mentioned. It says Jawan Jennings, Alontae Taylor, Nakobe Dean are good options for free agency. I like all those names. I think in the last 45 minutes, Parker, we fixed the Titans with these plans. I really
Yes,
do.
we did. And it seems very common sense on who they should go out and get. Alontae Taylor
Right.
and Jawan Jennings both played their college ball at Tennessee, and I don't have my orange shaded glasses on, but I'm just saying they're good. They're good football players.
Hey, I definitely don't have orange shaded glasses on. You can see my shirt here. I still like them as players for the Titans. I think they would be good additions. And
There's
again,
one thing for sure though: Golf My Way is not in favor of signing Nick Bosa.
no, he is not. He does not want Joey Bosa on the YouTube chat.
Him nor his steroid brother, to quote him.
Yes. And again, we can go through and do our fantasy football here and pick names off. A lot goes into this. There has to be mutual interest. The money has to be right. But the Titans have the most cap space in the league. It's only going to go up with some of the moves that they're going to make. So the Titans should have a lot at their disposal when it comes to adding to this roster in free agency. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to text or call. On the other side, we're going to quickly talk some Preds. Preds are out on an East Coast road trip, and they've lost 4 out of their last 5. Can they turn things around with just a few games left before the Olympic break and get back into the playoff hunt over these next 5 games? We'll talk about it coming up next. Then back into the Titans in the final hour of the show is Robert Saleh going to be introduced at 2 p.m. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5, The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you, wrapping up the second hour of the show. In the final hour, we'll get back to Robert Saleh being introduced today as the Titans head coach. Other things that we want to hear as he speaks to the media for the first time, but did want to spend some time on the Preds today because they are out on an East Coast swing. And after about a month and a half, 2 months, where they were fighting their way back into playoff contention, they've now lost 4 out of their last 5. Did steal a point in Boston back on Tuesday, lost 3-2 in overtime, but now 4 points back of a playoff spot. This Preds team, it's slipping, and you've only got 30 games left to go. No longer have games in hand against the teams in front of you. You're going to have to pick things up in a big way, and I think that has to start this weekend. You've got the Devils tonight, the Islanders coming up on Saturday before returning home for a couple of games, and then finishing up a week from today is the final game before the Olympic break. So you've got 5 games in the next week for the Predators. And you've got to be able, I think, you've gotten 3 points in the last 5 games. I think you probably need 7 in these next 5 games if you're going to feel okay heading into the Olympic break about your playoff chances. And Barry Trotz said earlier this week on DVD that he doesn't feel like these last 5 games are going to change how he feels about this team moving forward. And that's probably good, right? Like, I don't think that you want to make these big sweeping decisions solely based off a week's worth of hockey. But I think you do feel differently about this team depending on where they are heading into that Olympic break, because once you come back, you've got about a week until the trade deadline. So lots of big decisions are going to have to be made by Barry Trotz. I don't think you go buyer mode at this point by any means, because this team, even if you sneak in as the final wild card team, you're probably not going to be a cup contender. I know it's happened before in the NHL. It's one of those sports where you get in the dance and you have a chance, but I don't see it. You're not going to give away prospects or picks to go make moves. But like, there are some big names on this Preds roster. Ryan O'Reilly, Barry Trotz said everything is on the table. If you do get that big, as Barry Trotz likes to say, knock your socks off offer, do you do it with Ryan O'Reilly, who's been one of the big bright spots on this team this year? Parker, there's a lot to figure out for the Preds in this next week with 5 more games, and 3 of them are on the road. Going to be tough to stay in this playoff chase heading into the Olympic break coming up in just a week.
Right. It's go time. And it's like you were talking about with Andrew. We're literally 2 weeks away from opening day in college baseball. And it literally feels like football season just ended. And we still have another game to go in the Super Bowl. And basketball's getting ready to hit March Madness and all these sports. It's just the calendar so the sports calendar is so wacky. But if you're the Preds, you got 2 great opportunities this weekend with New Jersey and New York. So they're 2 very winnable games. A Devils team that's really struggled in the Eastern Conference, an all right Islanders team. You just need points, and now is the perfect time to do it.
And we do have some news on the Preds. Alex Doherty putting it out there about 10 minutes ago from Tennessee, and the Predators have sent Fedor Svechkov back to AHL Milwaukee. He says this move is a long time coming, I feel. He's just not done enough this season. 9 points in 49 games won't cut it, no matter how your defense looks. And it's true. It's disappointing 2 years in a row for this Preds team. You have a young center who you feel like is ready to maybe take the next step and can be in that top 6 for you. Last year it was Tommy Novak. They put him on the line with Stamkos and Marchessault, and you would think that would make him a lot better, but it just never worked, and they trade him away. And this year with Fedor Svechkov, there was a lot of excitement about him taking the next step as a young player, and it just hasn't happened. I didn't realize it was 9 points in 49 games.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. That's pretty rough.
I mean, it's just not going to be good enough.
Right.
And we will have Max Hers on the show tomorrow, and he can obviously bring a lot more detailed takes on all of this for us, of course, being over there with Preds Radio. But tough to see Fedor Svechkov, the season that he had when I think there was a whole lot of expectation that he was going to be a capable, maybe not second line center, but third line center, somebody who could help you out on the offensive end of the ice. And he ends up 9 points in 49 games, and he has been sent back to AHL Milwaukee. But again, the Predators back in action tonight. They are taking on the New Jersey Devils. And I do think you've got 7 points in the next 5 games, I think is probably about right. When we talk with Corey Curtis about the Preds, he's always talking about, hey, let's teams every 10 games get 12 points, and you're going to keep yourself in playoff contention. Well, you've only gotten 3 in the last 5 games. You were able to come back from down 3-0 and beat the Senators a week ago today, and then you get that 1 point on Tuesday against the Bruins. But that's been it. You really need to get things figured out. I don't think it's realistic that you're going to get 9 points in 5 games and get yourself to that 12 over the 10, but I think you need at least 7 to keep yourself in the playoff chase. So again, it is a 6:00 Central Time puck drop from out there at the Prudential Center in New Jersey tonight. Pregame coverage starts at 5 right here on 102.5 The Game. Before we wrap up the hour, I did want to get to this text from Abner, because we do get this a lot, Parker. I don't know if you've seen this, but he says, hey guys, love the show. I was wondering what you guys thought about the Titans pursuing Henry Ruggs. We get texts about this maybe once every couple weeks.
What?
Henry Ruggs, I believe he is going to get out of jail soon, right? Like he served his time. He's trying to turn his life around coming out of prison, wants to get back into the league. I just don't see it. Like that can't
believe
be
it or not.
plan.
That's not the first text that I've gotten from Henry Ruggs, or not gotten from Henry Ruggs, but gotten regarding Henry Ruggs in the last 24 hours.
Really?
Yeah. I got one last night from a couple buddies just talking about Henry Ruggs and the fact that he's going to get out of jail soon.
Well, and I get it. The thought is that dude, he was supposed to be a star. I don't think that's somebody that you can rely on. I'm sure it wouldn't be an expensive deal. This is from just a couple of days ago? No, this is from last year. But Albert Breer said, I believe we could see Henry Ruggs in an NFL uniform again. Eventually, people will start to look forward, and Ruggs' public appearance was at least a reminder that he's eligible for parole in early August 2026. So, anyway, just wanted to put that out there. I don't see it happening with the Titans. Maybe he gets a chance somewhere, but I don't think that is going to be part of Mike Borgonzi's plan. He probably goes somewhere where he has more of a connection. But, I'm thinking about it. Parker, did Henry Ruggs play for Brian Daboll at Alabama?
Actually, I think so.
He did.
I think so.
So,
man,
who knows? Maybe Abner's onto something here. I don't know, but he would only be 27 years old. Maybe that's a free agent.
Was he able to do speed training in jail?
Maybe. I don't know. Albert Breer again says that at that point he'll be 27, and at least on paper he'd be in the heart of his athletic prime. It's unclear whether the NFL would suspend him. So again, not something that I would bank on, but that's an idea from Abner. And I think if we line up the timelines, right, he was maybe he didn't play for Brian Daboll.
Brian Daboll was there in 17 for one season.
And Ruggs was drafted in 2020. Okay, never mind. For some reason, I thought that he was drafted in 18 or 19. So never mind.
Well, he started his college career in 2017, so they may have crossed paths.
Yeah. So who knows? That's an off-the-wall idea. He is.
I was not expecting to talk about that.
No, I was not, but I saw the text and thought it at least deserved a mention. He is not listed on the top 50 free agents by ESPN. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to text or call. Our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. On the other side, again, a big topic today in Robert Saleh's introductory press conference is going to be the plan at offensive coordinator. Brian Daboll is hired, and he is going to be the offensive coordinator this year. But he got looks even after being fired from the Giants. All it would take is one good year to shoot him right back towards the top of head coaching lists. And I thought it was interesting yesterday. We talked with Corey Curtis about, man, there's 10 openings in the NFL this year. It can't be that much next year. But I went through it last night and realized that, man, there are a lot of coaches that should not feel comfortable, and there could be a lot of openings in 2027. We'll talk about it coming up next. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Final hour on this Thursday. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Robert Saleh being introduced as the newest Titans head coach at 2 o'clock. Excited for that. And the one thing that I think we all keep coming back to of what we want to hear about is Saleh's plan for Cam Ward. I think we all feel pretty good about Saleh's ability to coach the defense. Yeah, questions about what went wrong in New York, I think, are going to be interesting too. And I'm excited to hear that. But the main thing is, what is your plan for Cam Ward, short term and long term? Brian Daboll is clearly a big part of the short term plan for Cam Ward, bringing in a guy who has experience developing young quarterbacks. Josh Allen is the name we'll continue to point to, but even look at what Jackson Dart did in his rookie season, most of it with Brian Daboll as his head coach. You like what Brian Daboll has done with young quarterbacks, and I think that it is promising to see that partnership, at least for this upcoming year. But again, one of the things that came out after Robert Saleh was hired was his plan overall for Cam Ward was a big reason why he was hired. The succession plan beyond Brian Daboll or whoever at that point, whoever the offensive coordinator was going to be, the succession plan after an offensive coordinator leaves, how are they going to continue to develop Cam Ward and give him that structure? And talking with Corey Curtis yesterday, we both kind of brought up, well, there's 10 openings this year. How many head coaching openings could there realistically be next year, right? Like, you usually don't see a huge mass exodus in back-to-back years. But Parker, I went through, and I'm sure you've seen this on the grid today, but these coaching spots, tell me if I'm wrong on any of these being not only possible, but maybe more than that heading into this year. The Jets. I think Aaron Glenn I think he might be just a 2-year guy, especially when we don't know who their quarterback is going to be. It may not be completely his fault, but if they're going to just run it back with like a Justin Fields, or if they're going to sign somebody off the free agent market like a Malik Willis or trade for Kyler Murray, I don't see that working out. I think Aaron Glenn for sure could be gone after this year.
Yeah, New York is a tough place to have success, as not a lot of people have done it. In fact, they're going on 15 seasons, not even making the playoffs. So
right.
It has been tough, and I am torn on Aaron Glenn because I think he was a fantastic defensive mind in Detroit. Fantastic with all the injuries that they had, and yet he still had them playing at a pretty high level, or as high of a level as humanly possible given the situation. So I think he is a good coach, but it is going to take a lot to be successful in New York, and I don't see this being an immediate turnaround. And if they don't have success this year, I mean, there was a world in which he got fired after this season. So if they don't have success next season, he may be on the chopping block as well.
Well, and that's why that was the first name that I wrote down. I think it's safe to say Aaron Glenn needs to show improvement this year. I'd put him in the Brian Callahan category from last year of like, hey, you could have been fired this year. We're going to give you another chance. But if you don't turn things around, they're going to look elsewhere. Cincinnati, I think Zach Taylor, I went to the Super Bowl leash has to be running out at some point. He's very much on the hot seat heading into this year. Dallas, like, the Schottenheimer hire always felt a little strange to me. Like, it kind of felt like a placeholder until Jerry found somebody else he liked better. So I would say he's on the hot seat. Dan Quinn, I think he's definitely on the hot seat. Again, just like Zach Taylor, the I went to the NFC Championship leash is even shorter than the I went to the Super Bowl leash. So I think another year where Jaden Daniels maybe doesn't take a step forward, maybe struggles with injuries again, Dan Quinn could be gone. So those are the four that I look at and say, I feel like they definitely could open up after this year. The other two that I have in kind of the hot seat area, what are your thoughts on Kevin O'Connell?
You don't touch Kevin O'Connell. Don't touch him.
You don't think so?
No. But because I really like Kevin O'Connell. I really like his ability to develop quarterbacks. The truth is, we may have an idea. Like, I wasn't the biggest fan of J.J. McCarthy coming out of Michigan. If I was the Vikings, I would not have drafted him. I would have kept Sam Darnold. I wouldn't have turned to J.J. McCarthy, but they're confident that he's going to be the guy. So you got to give Kevin O'Connell the benefit of the doubt, just given his track record of working with quarterbacks. Plus, J.J. McCarthy missed his entire rookie year, so obviously that took a big toll on him. He was injured on and off all of this season. So if J.J. McCarthy is able to be fully healthy, I'd like to see him in a season with Kevin O'Connell. So we'll have to see how that works.
Well, he's definitely getting this year, but Sam Darnold's success can't be helping his case there. of, well, we gave you a lot of credit for Darnold making this a 14-win team last year, but guess what? He was a 14-win team in Seattle too, and they're in the Super Bowl. That can't be helping him. And I get what you're saying. Like, Kevin O'Connell does have a good track record, but they stuck their claim to J.J. McCarthy, and if he fails, I wonder if Kevin O'Connell fails too. Todd Bowles is another one that I would put in there with Tampa Bay. There were rumors that maybe he might be gone this year. I think he would be up there as well. So that's 6 jobs that I think I would put in the hot seat territory if they need a good year to keep their jobs. And I will put Kevin O'Connell in that category. Otherwise, I think Cleveland, the Todd Monken hire yesterday, feels like a Band-Aid hire and we didn't really like a lot of names in this cycle. Let's see what Todd Monken does. And if he doesn't do great, we'll fire him and we'll try again next year. Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni, I think both are reasonably on the hot seat heading into this year.
Which is crazy for me to think about, considering Nick Sirianni has led the Eagles to 2 Super Bowls and won 1 last season. So that's crazy. But Philly fans are very unreasonable. So the second that they don't have success, they'll be calling for your job. I don't know about Sirianni, but the LaFleur one is interesting because, Robbie Stanley, resident Packers fan, wanted him gone. But the front office is trying to work on an extension for him or get a deal done. That deal has not gotten done. So I don't know what's going to happen there. So I think it's reasonable that you have them on there. I did want to make a point real quick about Dallas with Marty Schottenheimer, because that, to me, that feels very similar to what just happened in Buffalo. They fired Sean McDermott. They promote from within. Dallas, they let Mike McCarthy go. His contract expired. They just let him go. And then they promote Marty Schottenheimer. It's a risk. Now, Joe Brady, I'm surprised, has not become a head coach sooner, and he's a great offensive mind, but you're just taking what you already had and running it back. So I don't know exactly what that does for you.
Yep, I agree. That's why I think Dallas could definitely be a job that's open next year. So you look at that, and you mentioned Green Bay too. I think Matt LaFleur just signed an extension, but I still think he's one bad year away from being run out of town, especially talking to Robbie Stanley, he shouldn't have even been back for another year. And then you never know about other one and dones. Like Arizona right now, it seems like Arizona is trying their best to get back in on the Clint Kubiak conversation. But if I'm Clint Kubiak and I had a choice, I'd be going to Vegas instead of Arizona. So just the names that we have listed there, that's 10 more openings. And they probably won't all open, but I could see there being another busy coaching carousel next year as the patience just continues to grow thinner across the NFL. Parker, it's everything around pro football and college football now too. We saw how many big name coaches got fired there. There is so much less patience for these guys to get things turned around, whether it's coaches, whether it's GMs, whether it's quarterbacks. You don't get 4 or 5 years to instill your vision and develop. You get 2, usually. It's like after 2 years, you either know or you don't on a lot of these guys. At least the owners seem to think so. And if you get through 2 and they don't know and they give you another year, the 3rd year becomes make or break. So I think maybe this is just the trend that we're getting to of you're not going to have these years where there's only 3 or 4 head coaching openings. There's going to be 7, 8, 9, 10 every single year as these teams that aren't at the top of the league try and just cycle through and see if they can get something new to work.
That's the crazy part about this world we live in. Then this one's going to hit really close to home for you. But think about Frank Beamer, how many years it took before he finally had his first double-digit win season at Virginia Tech. What was it, 9 seasons before he got to 10 wins? That sounds right. Something along those lines. That would never, ever happen in today's world, ever.
I will tell you, and I kind of hope my dad is listening. My dad yelled "Fire Frank Beamer" at a Tech game one time. He was in the crowd and was yelling to fire Beamer. I think he's very glad that no one listened to him. But that is the fans have less patience, and it does feel like ownership and athletic departments in the college level are siding with the fans more than they are with the guys that they bring in. And sometimes it's the right decision, right? Like Corey and I have talked about firing Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan was not the wrong decision. Hiring them was the wrong decision. But in general, guys are getting less time because the fans are getting less patient as we go through in the NFL and college football. So I think you're right. You're not getting as much time, and I think we're going to see more and more openings at both the college and the pro level. 615-737-1025, which brings us to the connection with the Titans here. That's why it is so important for the Titans to have a plan at offensive coordinator. And we'll talk about that coming up next. Robert Saleh being introduced to the media today, that is going to be one of the big questions is, hey, you're a defensive coach. You brought in an accomplished offensive coordinator who is one good season away from being a head coach elsewhere. What's your plan? And I'm excited to hear that from Robert Saleh. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025, the game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you. A few more segments on this Thursday. Robert Saleh being introduced as the next Titans head coach at 2 p.m. And again, we will have all of your coverage throughout the day here on 1025, the game. Chase and Big Joe coming up right after us at noon, DVD at 3. And of course, we will have reaction tomorrow. Max Herr's going to be with us for an hour on Friday's show, and then we'll get into Robert Saleh's introductory press conference. But the one thing that we have been pointing at of Robert Saleh needs to explain to us what his plan is for Cam Ward. That is one of the big things in today's press conference. And again, I don't want to act like what he says today is going to make or break what the Titans look like for the next 10 years. It's not true. Actions speak much louder than words. He's got to execute that plan. But when you are a defensive head coach who gets hired with a young quarterback, we need to know what you want to do with him and what your offensive staff is going to look like, not just this year, but for the future. And with Brian Daboll coming in, I think it is the perfect hire for the Titans this year. But you also have to know what you're going to do moving forward. And we got a texter earlier that said, like, hey, just be happy that Daboll's here now and you can worry about that later from a fan's perspective. And I get that. As fans out there, you should just be thrilled that Brian Daboll wanted to come work with Cam Ward and is going to be here for this year, because this is such a crucial year of growth for Cam Ward. That is number one in importance right now, is that Brian Daboll is here. He is signed. He's going to be working with Cam Ward in 2026. But if you're looking ahead, like Robert Saleh should be, and apparently he was in his interview, you have to have a plan. And it does, I don't know if concern is the right word, but it's interesting that Shea Tierney is the choice at quarterbacks coach, because yes, Brian Daboll should be able to help pick his offensive staff, but I think Robert Saleh, who is the head coach, also needs to be planning for the future here. And with Shea Tierney, who has been with Daboll since Alabama, I just do wonder if Daboll gets a head coaching job with the Bengals or the Cowboys next year, wouldn't Tierney go with him and maybe be his offensive coordinator? So I do think, and maybe Saleh, I'm not sure he's going to give you all the answers today, but I do wonder if maybe the succession plan isn't from somebody currently on the staff, and maybe Saleh has an idea of some of the up-and-comers in that Shanahan tree who could be up to be offensive coordinators next season.
Right, and we're not trying to look. We are looking ahead, but at the same time, happy that Daboll's here. That's the guy that most people wanted, myself included. But if you look at Shea Tierney's, he was at Alabama. That I think it was the year before actually that Daboll was there. Or he was there in 16 and 17, so they cross paths with Daboll. Then he followed Daboll to the Bills, where he was an offensive assistant and assistant quarterbacks coach along with Daboll. Then he followed him to New York and now Tennessee. So it's really natural. It's just human tendency. It's not even just a thing in the NFL to go with what you know. So naturally, Borgonzi is going to interview these guys like Nagy because they worked together in Kansas City when they were looking for a new general manager. John Eric Sullivan cross paths with Chad Brinker in Green Bay. It's just natural to go with what you know as a coach. So if Daboll was to get another job, you got to assume that most of these guys would be gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a relationships business, just like most businesses around the world, right? Like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. The Titans have Brian Daboll in here, and he has brought in some of his staff from the Giants who he trusts. I wonder what the next steps are if Daboll does have success here. And as the texter pointed out, like, this isn't something to worry about now, but the reason we're pointing to it is because that was mentioned as a reason Robert Saleh was hired, was this succession plan. And I was glad to hear yesterday when we had TD on that apparently he's going to ask that question about what this supposed succession plan is for Cam Ward. Cam Ward's development isn't a one-year thing. He's not going to go from this raw, flashy, but inconsistent quarterback that you see now to a ready-to-go franchise quarterback, possible Super Bowl winner in one calendar year. I think this is an important year. And you could see a big jump from Cam Ward, like you saw from Caleb Williams and Drake May last year. You could see that big jump this season under Brian Daboll, but you need sustained growth. Look at CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud looked great in year one. Looked like he was going to take the league by storm and join the ranks of Mahomes and Allen and Burrow and Jackson in year one. He was ranking himself as one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL after his rookie season. The quarterback that we saw 2 weeks ago in Foxborough was shell-shocked. And I don't know if that has to do with the coaching. Bobby Slowick was there for year one, got fired after year 2. They bring in somebody new for year 3. But development is not a one-year thing. It's not, all right, Brian Daboll's here this year. He's going to develop Cam Ward, and boom, he's a franchise quarterback. It's got to continue. They've got to be able to not just build up Cam Ward for 1 year, and you do hope he takes that big jump, and you feel really good about him as a franchise quarterback after year 2, but it's got to keep going. I don't think you're going to feel completely convinced that Cam Ward is a franchise quarterback until probably he signs the big extension, if he does. And maybe even then you're not so sure. Look at Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, he signed the big extension. How do they feel about him in Miami? Not very good. So I think with Cam Ward, you just have to continue to see the sustained growth. Having Brian Daboll here is awesome. And that was my number 1 pick for offensive coordinator. But you have to have that plan. So I'm excited to hear from Robert Saleh about that. I think the other thing that you want to hear from Robert Saleh is what went wrong in New York. We all point to ownership. Woody Johnson obviously is not known as one of the top owners in the NFL. You point to Aaron Rodgers, who basically took over that team for the final year and a half that Robert Saleh was there. Like, you got Nathaniel Hackett to come in as his offensive coordinator, and you sign all of Aaron Rodgers' friends to be his wide receivers. And it wasn't Robert Saleh's team for the last year and a half. Ownership said, we want Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron's going to get whatever he wants. So all of that factors in, but I'd like to hear from Robert Saleh specifically today about what he thinks he learned from that experience and what he's going to do differently in his second attempt here in Nashville.
And to your point that you were making about Tua, I wanted to bounce off of that real quick. You don't ever want to get to the point where you don't know what your next option is, so you just give your quarterback a large extension. For example, with Jordan Love and with Trevor Lawrence, the Packers and Jaguars respectively didn't know what their next option would be. They didn't know if they had the guy or not. They extended him, and it ended up working out. It was a huge gamble, but it ended up working out, at least in the short term. With the Dolphins, though, I'm fairly confident, almost 100%, that they want to move off Tua, but they have that big contract, so they're kind of in QB hell. It's not a good place to be, kind of like the Cleveland Browns. So with Cam Ward, you want to make sure that he has some stability with who his offensive coordinator is, who the quarterback's coach is. You don't want to continually rotate through coaches, especially with a young quarterback like Cam Ward. So that's why this aspect of it is so important. And I mean, was he not the number 1 overall pick? The guy that you're banking the hopes of your franchise on? So that's what I think.
No, I'm with you there. I'm a Cam Ward believer, and I think he is going to be the franchise quarterback for this team with the right development and the right pieces around him. But I would much rather know that he's not than be in that limbo. Because like you said, that's the worst place to be as a franchise where, you spent a top pick on that quarterback. Look at the guys you just mentioned, Jordan Love and Trevor Lawrence and Tua Tagovailoa. You spent the top pick on those guys, and they haven't been bad enough that you're like, are we going to find somebody better? That's the worst place to be, is where it's like, I don't know if do we want to start over at quarterback? No, not really. All right, let's just give him $250 million. That is, like you said, it's QB hell. And I would much rather know Cam Ward is not the guy than not know and sign up for 3 or 4 more years. So You've got to be able to find the right guys to come in and develop him. Brian Dable is a great start, and we'll see what Robert Saleh's plan is as he is introduced at 2 p.m. today. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to text or call. A lot of the questions today, of course, are going to be directed at Robert Saleh. Rightfully so. This is the first time that we're getting to hear from him. But there are some things I want to hear from Mike Borgonzi, and we will talk about that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly with you on this Thursday. Final couple of segments here. And we are talking about Robert Saleh's introductory press conference coming up at 2 o'clock. He's wearing a red tie. He has arrived. Red, maybe hinting at some new uniforms here. I've been keeping up with all of the new uniform talk. I don't know if you have, Parker. I'm kind of excited. It seems like the Titans might be going full rebrand, which I think might be something that they've been due for.
Yeah, no, if it's a red jersey, I'd be happy with that. Like more so as an alternate look, but I haven't been keeping up with it as much, but I am excited. I want to be surprised more than anything. I don't want anything spoiled.
Yeah, it usually does get spoiled. The big question that's been being asked out there on Twitter is whether they're going to remove the flames from the logo and just go with the T in the circle with the stars. But who knows? I think that'll be something probably for February, March. Maybe we'll get more information on that. Quick update before we talk more Titans. Vanderbilt men's basketball just announced that their game on Saturday against Ole Miss has been flipped. It is no longer in Oxford. It is in Nashville at 5 p.m. So the Commodores and Rebels played twice this year. It was supposed to be in Oxford on Saturday and then back in Nashville in March. They have flipped those games. So 5 p.m. tip Saturday, Vandy men's basketball against Ole Miss in Memorial Gymnasium as Oxford recovers from the winter storm. They've closed their campus through February 8th. So obviously thinking of everybody down there in Oxford, and that game will now be played in Nashville on Saturday. So if you want to come out, there will be basketball at Memorial Gym Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon. Reminder, $1 tickets for Vandy women's basketball against Florida. So if you want to come out, see Caleb Blake's $1.
How in the world does that happen?
They do it for one game a year. It's the Grow the Game initiative. So it's $1. Everybody gets to come out, watch right now the number 5 team in the country. Vandy women's basketball plays tomorrow right here in Birmingham, Alabama against Ole Miss. So make sure you come on out on Sunday. So Saturday and Sunday, back-to-back games for Vandy men's basketball, women's basketball. And again, $1 against Florida on Sunday. So excited for that. Back to the Titans here. Robert Saleh being introduced at 2 p.m. over at St. Thomas Sports Park. And we've talked plenty about what we want to hear from Saleh. I'm also very interested in what Mike Borgonzi has to say, because I'm sure we're going to get some answers at the very least on the process of this. And the one big hole in the Titans coaching process was, why was Saleh fast-tracked so much? We were talking about other names of finalists, and, Stefanski gets swept up the day before he's supposed to come to Nashville. Same thing with Jeff Hafley. And Matt Nagy was really the only guy still sticking around on that finalist list. But then Robert Saleh eliminated from the playoffs on Saturday night. They canceled a virtual interview Sunday. He's in Nashville Monday. He's the head coach before midnight. It happened very fast, and I would like an answer on that of, was this something that they saw in their research that they had in the months leading up to the coaching search of, hey, this is a guy that we wanted all along? Or what changed that allowed them to fast track him and say, you know what, this is the guy? Was it because they missed out on options they wanted more, which they're not going to say outright? But I do want to know why it happened so quickly and why Saleh, why they were so convicted on him that all it really took was 48 hours from him being eliminated from the playoffs to sign him up as the next head coach.
Right. It all happened so quickly. And that's the thing. I wish I was a fly on the wall to truly find out, because I'm sure he had a great plan for the Jets too. I'm sure they liked what he had to say. That's why I have no doubt that he's going to win this press conference today. I have no doubt, because he just gives off, his personality, culture builder, very hardcore guy, militaristic. So I have no doubt that he's going to win the press conference. I just want to know what he said. So I'm excited to hear him today.
Yeah, Saleh's going to win the press conference. He doesn't seem like he's an awkward guy who's going to step up there and not really know what he's saying. He's going to win it. But there are important questions that I think Titans fans want to know the answer to. We've talked ad nauseum about the Cam Ward plan, what happened with the Jets, but the Borgonzi answers, I think, are going to be just as interesting. I don't know how many questions he's going to take, right? Like, they want to focus on Saleh. They don't want this to get off the rails. And, I don't think we're going to get a Rand Carthon situation of stop bashing my picks. Like, why are you questioning me so much about the Robert Saleh hire? But I think Mike Borgonzi has to realize there are some questions about this process. They interviewed so many people, and then Robert Saleh just out of nowhere gets interviewed and gets the job. Like, I think there are valid questions about how that happened and why that happened. I also think a question probably is going to be asked about Amy. How involved was Amy in this process? The reports are that she wasn't involved in the initial interviews, but she did talk to the finalists, including Saleh. I'd like to know how involved she was in the decision. Was this something that was truly handed off to Mike Borgonzi, or was she nudging him in one direction or another? I don't know. So I think that's something that may be asked. Is Amy Adams Strunk going to be there? I think is a big question too. I would say yes, right? Like, I think she has to be there.
You would like to think so, right? I mean that's
right,
the
like,
hope.
She was at Callahan's, right?
Yeah, she was.
Was she at Borgonzi's introductory press conference last year?
No.
Yeah, I don't think she was.
I don't think so.
So, but I think with a head coach, right? Like, I'm looking at,
I sure hope she's there, because if she's not,
pictures,
we're going to have, there's going to be a lot of talk, a lot of chatter.
So when
on the
Borgonzi was introduced last year, it was Brinker, Borgonzi, Callahan, and it looks like Burke Nihill were the four guys there. So
it's
no
okay.
Amy.
It's okay. Chad Brinker
year.
represents Amy. It's okay.
Right.
She was there. She was there in spirit.
She was. Where is she? She's at her house. I think she has to be there. I think it's a bad look if she's not there. Not that she's going to take questions. She never does. But I think her being there and being present for what is such a massive turning point in this franchise would at least show some fans that, like, all right, she's not hiding. I don't know. It's not important, but it is something that I think a lot of people are going to pay attention to, is whether Amy is going to be standing up there. Does she make an opening statement or something, or is that something Mike Borgonzi does? I don't know, but I'm excited to tune in, and there are a lot of questions that need to be answered on all sides. But as we said, he's going to win the press conference. It's just going to be a matter of, do we get the answers that we're looking for? That remains to be seen. But 2:00 today is when Robert Saleh going to be introduced to the media. And again, you can get all of your coverage, your reaction right here on 102.5 The Game. I don't know how deep they're going to go to in this press conference. Like, I think there are some questions that I have that are probably going to fall into a different kind of press conference, I guess I would say. Like, this one is probably more big picture stuff. I do wonder how deep into the roster they get, because every coach has different things that he wants in different players. And we'll get answers on Cam Ward, I'm sure, and maybe some of the other young guys. But I would like to know how he feels the Titans' current young up-and-comers fit into his plan moving forward. But that might be something more for a combine or pre-free agency type of press conference as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to text or call. Our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Last call for phones. We'll continue talking about Saleh being introduced. And there was something stupid that was put out there today, and it's from Emmanuel Acho, and maybe we'll touch on that on the
stumbled across this on my timeline. I was hoping you'd bring it up.
I saw that we had a little bit of time here at the end, and I feel like we have to talk about it. It is the buzz on Twitter right now. We'll talk about it coming up next and wrap up the show. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game.
because any expectation for Shedeur Sanders under Todd Monken, I believe, will lead to disappointment. There is nothing about Todd Monken as a head coach that should get you excited. As an offensive coordinator, you could say Lamar Jackson had an MVP season under Todd Monken. As an offensive coordinator, Lamar Jackson had 41 touchdowns and 4 interceptions under Todd Monken. As an offensive coordinator, you can make arguments under Todd Monken. Stetson Bennett won 2 national championships at Georgia under Todd Monken. But as a head coach, no. Nothing about Todd Monken as a head man gets me excited. I need to see who the offensive coordinator is going to be. That's what I need to see. But what I don't yet see, T, is like, how is Todd Monken going to command that locker room, command that group of men? And also, if I'm Shedeur or anybody in that locker room, why am I listening to Todd Monken? What have you won on an NFL level as a head coach? You're not even a head coach on an NFL level. So I don't even have expectations for Shedeur under Todd Monken, because I believe any expectations I would have, he would not meet. Because why am I excited about it, T?
That was Emmanuel Acho talking about the Browns hiring Todd Monken as their head coach and basically saying Shedeur Sanders gets a pass for anything that happens this year because Todd Monken has never been a head coach at the NFL level. Jake Lyman,
did I just play a real video? Is that real?
I could not stop laughing. The way he delivered it too was so funny. I mean, I do not understand how he got to that point of, like, why should Shedeur Sanders listen to Todd Monken? Because he's never been a head coach at the NFL level. Why should anyone listen to any coach ever? Like, I look back at Jared Goff. Similar situation. Jared Goff, of course, was the number 1 overall pick. So maybe he does have a little bit of room to be like, man, I'm the number 1 overall pick. You better bring in a coach for me. And they bring in Sean McVay, who Sean McVay was not this highly touted guy.
Well, what has he won?
Yeah, what has he won at the NFL level? Why should I listen to him? I mean, it is – I do not understand how he got there and why he felt like that was necessary to say. The thought that kept going through my mind was the Billy Madison. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul. That is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Emmanuel, somebody on the text line, Trevor just sent in a screenshot of Emmanuel Acho's career stats. And it says, if I'm a casual, why am I listening to Emmanuel Acho? 20 career games, 2 starts. What have you won at the NFL level, Emmanuel Acho?
I love the pettiness from the. That's great. That's. I can't believe it. I can't believe that was a real video, because why should you listen to your head coach?
It's your head coach. Like,
I don't care how you feel about him. He's your head coach. I don't care. What is Shedeur? What is Shedeur won?
Right. That is exactly what I was going to say. Sure, if Emmanuel Acho wants to make the argument of, let's say Andy Reid retires and they bring in some unproven guy, which I don't think Todd Monken is. Like, Todd Monken has the pedigree to be a head coach. Like, did I love the hire for the Browns? No. But it's not like it's not like they hired Lou Anarumo. Like, I would have been stunned if the Titans did that. But let's say the Chiefs bring in some unproven guy. Sure, maybe you can have the conversation of, like, why should Patrick Mahomes answer to this guy? He's your coach. That would be number 1. But, like, sure, you can look at it and say Patrick Mahomes is multiple-time MVP, 3 Super Bowls. Like, he has earned the credibility to say, I'm going to do my thing, and you're going to come in here and help me. What has Shedeur Sanders done? He's a Pro Bowler. I guess that's it. This Pro Bowl quarterback. Why should?
And we know how we feel about that, because we talked about it yesterday. But he's your head coach for one, and I'm sorry, but whether you agree or not, Shedeur Sanders was a 5th-round pick. He was a rookie last year. He came in relief. Started out the year as a 3rd stringer. You listen to him because you're head coach. You haven't earned the credibility to do otherwise.
Yeah, and I don't hear Emmanuel Acho saying, why should Cam Ward listen to Robert Saleh? He failed as a head coach.
What does he want?
If you're going to make that point, then make the point about the number 1 overall pick. Both would be stupid, but at least I could get behind, like, some sort of credibility for the quarterback. Shedeur Sanders, was he talented enough to get picked before he was? 100%. He didn't. He's a 5th-round pick, and he threw 7 touchdowns and 10 interceptions in his rookie season. Like, sorry. Craig on the text line says, by this logic, I'm just going to do what I want at work. Why should I listen to my boss? Yeah, like that's basically what it is. You have a new boss
because he's your boss.
Right. You may not think that he has the credentials to be your boss, but guess what? If you don't listen to your boss, you're going to get fired. So Shedeur Sanders, for some reason, people think that like the hire the Browns made should be centered around Shedeur Sanders being the franchise quarterback. I really don't think that's the case. I think the Browns realize that they're not in position to take a quarterback who's going to be their franchise guy this year. So they're just going to say, you know what? Why not give Shedeur a season, see if we can develop him? But the Browns are perfectly happy moving on from Shedeur Sanders at the end of this year. They didn't invest very much in him. I think this is a hire of, let's see what this group can do together. And guess what? If they fail, we'll clean house and we'll start over in 2027.
And it would be hard for Shedeur if that were to happen. He would get another opportunity, I'm sure, but it makes things a lot harder on yourself. So that's why you listen to Todd Monken, because he may play you if you listen to him.
Yeah, right. Like Shedeur Sanders should not be guaranteed the starting quarterback job. I think Andrew Berry, their GM, came out and said, like, we are going to explore other avenues at quarterback. Shedeur Sanders is not this guy who's completely earned the starting quarterback spot for 2026. So yeah, you listen to Todd Monken if you want to get on the field, because if you don't, you're probably not going to play very much. Anyway,
and then you make yourself look stupid. So I watched this video, and to be honest, like, we're all thinking the same thing on it. It's dumb, but I immediately thought, like, man, Skip Bayless Jr. That's exactly what we have here. That was my first thought.
Skip Bayless had a take yesterday that was similar, I want to say. Let me see. I can't find it, but
he's had a lot of takes.
I think he was upset about Todd Monken too. But anyway,
and I understand, like, if you're upset about the Todd Monken hire, fine. Like, it's not the most sexy job. It's not the most sexy name. But to just come out and say, well, why would you listen to him? What does he want on the – well, this is his first head coaching opportunity, Emmanuel.
It's, I mean, one of the worst takes that I've ever heard. Trevor on the text line says, has anyone checked on Mel Kiper? I'm sure he's stroking out over this. Yeah. Mel Kiper continues to go to his grave on Will Levis. I don't know if you saw him.
I have heard him talk about
Field Yates about, like, what did Cam Ward do that's better than Will Levis?
I actually did not hear that. I'm glad I did.
You didn't see that?
No.
Maybe we'll have to play that at some point. It was pretty funny. I mean, him and Field Yates are going after each other.
Well, what does Cam Ward want on an NFL level?
This might have been like middle of the season, so it could have been before we saw Cam take some strides at the end. But I thought it was funny. But yeah, Mel Kiper, as much as he loved Will Levis, he loved Shedeur Sanders, as we all found out on draft weekend. So I'm sure maybe he'll have the same take of, oh, you can't judge Shedeur Sanders for anything that happens this season because they hired Todd Monken.
When we get accused of, like, engagement farming or clickbaiting or whatever that is, no. This video that we just played, that's the definition of clickbait, because it got like 4.6 million views after being posted not even 24 hours ago.
No, that's full on rage bait that we just saw from Emmanuel.
That is clickbait right there.
Yep. And so we had a little time here at the end, and I saw that this morning and felt like we had to talk about it, because that is up there for dumbest take of the year. And I struggle to see it being beat even in the next 11 months. Wrapping up the show here, we got a couple more minutes. Robert Saleh going to be introduced at 2 p.m. today. Excited for that. And again, we will have reaction tomorrow. Tomorrow, the show going to be a little bit different. Max Hers will be with us for an hour. Connor Newt going to join us as well. I'll have to hop off at 11 with Vandy Women's Basketball playing in the afternoon. It's been a weird week, Parker, with all the puzzle pieces, with travel and the weather, but we're almost through it, and then we can hopefully start to get back to normal.
Yeah, I'm approaching 20 hours of airtime, which I'm not going to complain about by any means, but The voice tea, lemon tea is the go-to this week, especially with it being cold. Got to keep the voice feeling good.
I've got the honey lemon cough drops. Thankfully, I've been on the air a decent amount here, but we'll have game number 2 of the week coming up tomorrow afternoon. Big thanks to everybody who interacted today. Good stuff. Again, tomorrow, Max Hers will be with us for the first hour of the show. We're going to talk all things Preds. And again, they are in New Jersey tonight, taking on the Devils. Second of 3 straight road games. We'll react to that. Fedor Svechkov being sent down to Milwaukee. We'll talk plenty of Preds with Max. We'll react to the Robert Saleh press conference and much more. Been a fun show today. Again, keep it tuned right here on 102.5 The Game for all of your coverage. Robert Saleh being introduced as the next Titans head coach coming up at 2 p.m. It'll be DVD at 3. I'm sure they'll have full reaction, but coming up next, Chase and Big Joe. They'll take you from 12 to 3. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to 102.5 The Game.